In this video, we are going to look at should Aliyah Boston be the number one pick in the WNBA draft. Now, before we start, I am not proclaiming myself to be the Mel Kiper of the WNBA. However, I think declaring her as the number one pick without any thought or discussion is a big mistake, which is due in large part to traditional thinking. That being, you will always go with the big, i.e. Olajuwon over Jordan. But hey, it's hard to complain with the Rockets pick, as the Dream was a Hall of Famer. Obviously, Portland had regrets taking Sam Bowie over Jordan. The thinking of the time was you cannot win without a big, so better to have an average big was much better than taking Jordan and pairing him with Clyde Drexler on the same team. Yes, it was the 80s, and everyone's gotten smarter. Well, not really. I give you years later in 2007, Portland was faced with another draft day decision again and doubled down on the theory of always go big as they drafted Greg Oden over Kevin Durant. Again, it was size matters. That was after Jordan had dominated and showed that a big was not required to win a championship. Now, I admit the landscape has changed and teams are now more willing to look at a forward or a dominating guard over a average center. However, I think it should go further than that. In the modern game, which was started by the Phoenix Suns, the dominant big is now redundant, and they are going extinct like the dinosaur. There is no hope for them. If Shaquille O'Neal played today, he would not be a superstar, as his minutes would be limited. Well, the women's game has gone the same way. As Sue Bird has outlined in a number of interviews, the WNBA, in a lot of ways, is more ruthless and looking for mismatches than the NBA on defense. They pick on somebody. That is why the days of the super big are totally numbered in the WNBA. This is reflected in some of the transactions last year in the WNBA. The franchise on the forefront of everything, including clever accounting on the salary cap. Yes, the Aces showed us the way of the future of the big. Becky Hammon takes over as the Aces coach, and they have a decision to make on free agent Liz Cambage. They let her walk without a fight, made A'ja Wilson their center. And she is the prototype of what teams are looking for at the 5. Someone that can stretch the floor with their shot, run in transition, and be able to guard 1 through 5. The Aces badly exposed Cambage when they played her during the regular season. She couldn't keep up in transition as well. They kept on making her switch on A'ja Wilson on the pick and roll and were just crushing her because she couldn't get out to the shooter. And then as well, whenever she went down and had the mismatch inside, she couldn't take advantage because they just collapsed players on her as well. She was doomed by the sparked lineup because they didn't have any shooters. Yes. I know what you're going to say. Boston is much better than a past her prime Liz Cambage. And you'd be right. But the recent trade of Jonquel Jones to the Liberty goes to show the diminished value for a big. The Sun were crushed for not getting enough for Jones, as the main piece they got back from the Liberty was Rebecca Allen, whose status is unclear due to her punctured lung, unfortunately. The 2022 WNBA Finals was a bit of a test. Team speed versus the plod, that being the Sun, who would grind out teams with their size and rebounding. In the end, speed and the ability to switch 1 through 5 won, which is a large part of why I think the Aces are an extremely good chance to repeat. Yeah, newsflash on that. But overall, their parts, A'ja Wilson and Candace Parker, are a much better fit, in my opinion, than Stewie and Jones. Now, in regards to Boston, I'm not saying she won't be a really good pro. No, she will be good and will dominate at times. But if I have the number one pick, then I'm shooting for a player that has more impact every single game. And if you get Diamond Miller and she remains healthy, I think she has a chance to be a more dominant player, an impactful player in games than Boston. In my mind, taking Boston is the NFL equivalent of taking a running back in the first round. When I was a kid, it was Campbell, Dorsett, and Peyton. This continued to Sanders and Emmitt Smith. And then there was a debate. Is Emmitt Smith that great? I mean, he was great, no doubt. But was he just a simple reflection of how dominant the Cowboys' offensive line was? in the 90s? And then, as well, was it really worth taking a running back as their impact or ability to impact their life was so limited due to all the hits they took? And in some ways, I think this is the way the big post-up center is going. So if I was Indiana, I would take a really hard look at Boston versus Miller. If the doctors check out Miller's knee and it's not degenerative, then I would seriously consider taking, well, not consider, I would take Miller over Boston. However, I do note the internet is forever, and draft predictions, well, it's a deadly game, as I might wind up looking very silly in the future. But as well, I also remind you, teams still get hypnotized from the bigs and are scared of making a mistake. I give you the Phoenix Suns. Do you think if they could redraft again, do you think they would take DeAndre Ayton, or do you think they would take Luka? Huh. Now, I might put a few polls up in the community post. One would be, who would you take, or who would you take if you were drafting an Indiana spot? Would you take Diamond Miller, or would you take Aliyah Boston? The other question I had, let's throw Caitlin Clark in there as well. So the first two, who would you take? That'll be my first question between Boston and Miller. Then who would you take if we had Miller, Clark, and Boston? And then the final one that I'm very curious about, because I know who I would take. If there was a choice just straight up between Boston and Reese, who do you got? You taking Boston or you taking Reese? I'm taking Reese because I think that's where the center position is going. Anyway, please leave your poison down below. If you want to, like I said, I'll put up the community post. If you want to get your vote in there and tell me what an idiot I am, that's great as well. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Please like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. See you next time.